So I got recognized again, Bill.
So this is number 3?
This is the third time, and do you know what? It's not becoming any easier. I was with the captain waiting for a bus in Dublin. She was back over from South Korea for a bit. And we're standing at the bus stop, and this chap comes up, lovely chap comes up, and is like, "That's Artifexian," like to me, which automatically is really strange because it's kind of like, I know who I am, and you know who I am, but I don't know who you are. And it's this really odd dynamic. And like being told, like, you are this person, it's like, yes, I know this. And anyhow, so I was kind of taken off guard because I didn't expect, like, to be recognized there. And like, all I did was just laugh at the person. Like,
Oh dear.
yeah, but not as in like, well, I hope it didn't come across as, but it wasn't like, oh, you're a silly person. I just laughed at the concept of like once again being recognized
Right.
because it's so alien, and that made me all giggly, and I just giggled at the person, and I didn't even, I didn't even say hello or how are you, and like, let's have a selfie together, let's exchange a few sentences. I just laughed. And it was like really awkward. And afterwards, I felt terrible because I was like, "Oh my god, that person must think I'm the greatest douchebag going."
So you laughed at them and then they just like walked away and...
No, that we both got on the bus, and this
right.
person went to the bottom of the bus, and I went up to the top with the captain, which I gotta say is really nice on that person's part because I don't know if they did it intentionally, but it was nice to like not have to involve a third person in me and the captain's time. Mm-hmm. Which was really nice of them. But yeah, I did not paint myself in glory that day. And if that person is listening to the podcast, I apologize. I swear I'm not a dickhead. It's like, oh, it's so bad. So I'm just gonna say this on the show, so that it's cemented, and I do this in real life. Next time, if it happens that I get recognized, I am going to thank the person. That's number one. Thank you, and then say, "Do you want a selfie?" Take a selfie together and ask a question like, what got you into world building or something like that, and then kindly excuse myself because I need to have a modus operandi for this because every single time I'm caught on the hop, and the last time it was just mega cringy because yeah, like I said, I just laughed at the person without any other words. Oh my god, it's just so awful.
So for the first one went pretty well, right?
The first one is Mr. Clockwork Door.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Technically, that wasn't the first one, but we'll go with the first one.
Wait, when was the first one?
Well, technically, I was spotted a couple of times in Google, but that was kind of a self-selecting crowd.
Yeah, okay, but like of like the civilians, the civilian population,
Civilians. Yeah, that was a good one. I think
the second one you were drunk.
Yes. That one didn't go well either, and we took the.
And the third time you just laughed at the person.
Yeah, and when you
man, you need a PR manager.
You've no idea, like it was a really strange experience for the captain as well because the captain was like, you've told me about this happening, but to see it happening is really odd. To have a complete stranger just be like, "Hey, you," and use the internet moniker you go under. She was kind of taken aback and was like, "Huh. People do kind of know you," and I was like, "I know it's kind of weird, like." But yeah, so there you go. Met an Artifexian at the bus, exchanged no English with them, and just giggled at towards their general location. It's just
classic Edgar.
So if I get noticed again, I'll keep you informed how it goes. Hopefully next time it'll be better. Okay, so I have a couple of small little bits and bobs to cover before we should launch into the avalanche of Shivani follow-up.
Okay.
So we had a load of people suggest non-red revolutionary flags. Mm-hmm. And out of all of them, there was too many to list. Out of all of them, the flag of the Republic of Texas, I really like.
Okay.
I really like it. Just a navy blue flag with a gold star in the middle. Clean, elegant, brilliant. Really, really enjoy it. And I still can't get over the fact that it's not red, though. It doesn't look revolutionary to me. It just looks like a really nice flag. But there you go. So that's point number one. Point number two, I need to correct a Spanish error I made in the last show. I said that ser and a star, the two verbs to be, I said that one was temporary and one was permanent. And I got them flipped. I got them the wrong way. A star is temporary and ser is permanent. And I just want to make that clear for any Spanish learners or Spanish people who may have been a bit peeved at that. So that's that one. And then the final one, really interesting point for me, is someone in the subreddit, a u/one the gecko, who asked about, are there other world building podcasts? Now, I don't like the fact that people like other creators are like would think about encroaching on our territory.
No, that's not cricket at all. We're gonna have to sort that out.
Yeah, what you got? But at the same time, it's kind of like I would like to listen to other world building podcasts because I don't now. I don't know if any really good ones exist. So, just putting it on the show. If someone knows of a good world building podcast, and specifically a world building podcast, not like a language podcast that can be used, say, in your conlangs, or not like a geography podcast that can help you with geofiction. Specifically a podcast dealing with the concept of world building. If anyone knows of one, let me know, and I will put it in the next show for everyone else who's into podcasts and world building as well, because I think that will be quite important. Yeah?
For sure, yeah, for sure.
That is, I believe, the quickest amount of time I've ever done follow-up in. Let it be noted, Edgar did his entire follow-up in under 8 minutes. All right, Bill, do you want to crack into what is going to be a little bit longer, I'd imagine, Shivani follow-up?
Well, I just want to say my favourite of the non-red revolutionary flags was the Eureka flag.
The Eureka flag. Can you send me an email, link it to me?
Yeah, just a sec. It was, so it's from an Australian rebellion, the Eureka Rebellion, and it's a navy field with the Southern Cross, like the 5 stars of the Southern Cross, joined by a cross. And I'll send this to you.
This sounds familiar. I think that didn't make my favourite list because those stars it's connected to are a little bit too big. I think if I'm thinking the right one, they look a little bit comical. Yeah. The stars on the cross for me just look a little bit too comical.
Okay.
And or the thickness of the cross is a bit thick. It just looks a little bit cartoony.
Okay.
So if it was redesigned slightly, I think it would be a much better flag, and it would rival the Texas flag. Also, the stars, I don't like the fact that they're so pointed. There's too many points. What are they? There
too many points.
What are 8, 7 pointed? 8. So 8-point stars. I don't know. They look. They're not as good as the Texas one, in my opinion. Obviously, strange that it's navy blue again. Is there any sort of why navy blue? Is this the next go-to color after red?
Perhaps it's a good color.
It's
attractive.
I mean, it's no purple, but you know, what can you do? Yeah, no, good flag in general. Like, if it obeys the design laws and it looks aesthetically pleasing, it's just not to my taste. But yeah. So Shivani. Yeah,
thank you for everyone who got interested and who got engaged and left comments and stuff.
And boy,
I was
sorry, and boy did they. Like, there was
really
loads of comments about Shivani. It was great, and I really enjoyed reading them and listening to discussions you were having with people. I didn't drop in half the time, but it was lovely just listening to what was going on. Brilliant.
Yep. There were 2 users who had a bit of an exchange between themselves, Crid and Culmer, who were like really getting into it and talking about the different ways the phonology could have developed, etc., and the different grammatical things and my weird pluralization system. And I got to say, some people were really close to things that I had in mind when developing it.
Oh,
people
cool.
were guessing quite close to the mark. Yeah, it was Crid how they were thinking about how the plurals had developed, guessed pretty close to the mark of what I had in my mind.
And do you want to just give a TLDR on that for anyone who didn't read it?
So they said, I don't know whether my explanation is any better, but my first thought was that the original prefix for pluralization was N, and that in the proto-language, voiced stops were prenasalized. So instead of T turning into D, it was T turning into ND, so T, Nd, and so on. And then they give an example of that and how that would develop over time into the system that I had.
Okay, and that was close to what you were working on.
It was, pretty similar, yeah. It was pretty similar.
Very cool, very cool.
So let me just scan through the other mentions of here. The guesses for the influences were Mesoamerican languages and Irish, which is not correct, but I think between everything that was said in the last podcast and that, I can say that my influences were Nahuatl, which I'm probably mispronouncing, but the Mexican language, and Welsh, as I said in the last podcast. So that was the basis of the phonological inventory, and that was where I got the vocabulary. I would take the two words for a concept from each language and mash them together till I found something that I liked and had the nice, correct mouthfeel.
Do you know what I tried to do, just on a brief tangent from this, is I tried to do something similar for naming in Takar.
Right.
And you know the whole shtick with the Afro-Brazilian thing I'm going for?
Yeah.
I tried to mangle Portuguese and Swahili. And I
Right.
just put on the record, those two languages don't mangle very well. Like, I was like, okay, all right, I need to name these stars, right? Okay, let's look up the word for star in each of these languages. And like in Swahili, it's something like, I can't remember the exact word. I think it's Moanga.
Right.
And then, assuming I'm pronouncing that correctly, and then in Portuguese, it's like Estralha. And it's like the two, you can't just cram them together and then do mouthfeel because they're so like vastly different, So I was excited when you did this approach in the last show, and I was like, yes, I'm going to do that for my thing. And then just like the Afro-Brazilian conceit was just like completely did me in. But yes, yeah, more Shivani.
John Lang.
No, sorry, hang on. I have a question about the thing. Why did you go for the Mexican language and Welsh? Like, why those two?
I just always, like, for ages now, like for a couple of years now, I've had it in my head that it would be interesting to combine those sounds. That's all.
Okay, and like just because you listened to it and were like, oh, they're quite similar, they'd work well together.
No, I didn't expect them to be particularly similar. They were just lucky that they both had. It was lucky they both had the voiceless lateral alveolar fricative. Is that the right one? The double L in Welsh.
Good. No, I don't think that's what it's called.
Oh, sugar.
An alveolar fricative. No, it's a lateral. It's a lateral sound, but it's the hla sound.
Sorry, yeah. The lateral alveolar lateral fricative, isn't that it?
Something like that, yeah. But it's anyway. For the record, it's the hla sound.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, that's as good as reason as any. Just you were like, I think the two of them will go well together, and they did. Your words worked really, really well, and a really lovely ring to them.
Thank you very much.
So, anything else in the subreddit that you think is important, pertinent?
John Lang had a good few things to say. Being a Welsh speaker himself, he clarified the use of the Welsh unvoiced nasals. That's there in the thread if anyone wants to find it. He kind of agreed with you over the... Well, no, he didn't agree with you that the use of C should be avoided, but he thought that it could have been avoided in Shivani. So when presenting my language, I could have used the TS or something. It just doesn't feel right to me somehow, and I can't exactly explain why. I'm trapped in a kind of a difficult thing here because I want to... Because everything that I'm presenting has to be kind of easily flipped into an in-universe form. Mm-hmm. And I'm not expecting that they will have the Latin script in Janspar. Then I've locked Shibani into, at least in this instance, being written with some kind of alphabet or abjad. So I need to have everything that I've presented as a single sound needs to be able to be represented by a single glyph according to how I've written that blog post.
Why is
And I
this?
just
Why is this a bad thing? Like, why are you locked into this? This sounds great.
Well, no, it's not like necessarily a bad thing, but it's just like I have made that decision, and it is going to be hard for me to write a way out of that if I wanted to write a way out of that. I could just say that this book used a weird system of writing it that isn't actually all that popular, or it was only used for a couple of years or whatever. But as regards the C, I wanted to I could easily see TS happening together naturally as part of a word, without it being the ts sound.
Oh, okay. So you don't want to use TS as a sort of single glyph to represent the affricate, because T and S could happen in isolation but next to each other as well, and you don't want there to be confusion on that front.
Exactly, and the way I've written the language, that's less likely to happen with the other double glyphs that I've used, like the HM for the voiceless nasals and stuff. It's unlikely for that a H in isolation to occur beside an M in isolation.
Right, right. That makes sense. That makes sense, definitely.
So that's kind of what I'm getting at. Now, I'm sure that's not entirely consistent. I'm sure there's other kind of inconsistencies in how I've put the language together, but that was my thought process. And he suggests that if it's Shivani is meant to have Welsh influences, I should incorporate mutations, which is definitely a thing I've been considering about the language.
Now, I would explain mutations here.
So mutations are how in Celtic languages the word itself will actually change according to grammatical reasons. So the obvious version here is urus and shevus in Irish, where you change the initial sound either by putting a H after it or by putting another consonant in front of it. So ban, which means woman, it would sometimes be said as van with a BH, turning it into a V sound, or does MBEN, that might not exactly occur, but for example, if you put an M before it, you'll just pronounce the first letter, man.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's similar stuff in Welsh that whereas when we write Irish, we put an extra letter beforehand. In Welsh, they just change the first letter. But it's quite a similar phenomenon.
Yeah, it's
so the words themselves change in ways that they don't in English.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And I agree totally. If you're going down the Welsh inspired bent, I think that's definitely a thing you should explore. For no other reason than it's just really interesting. And it takes you away from the English paradigm, which is good.
Yeah. Now, I'm not sure to what extent I do think of it as being meant to have Welsh influences, or think of it as being a sort of a Celtic language. That was just one inspiration for the phonology and the vocabulary. But,
well, I mean,
because I'm into the Celtic languages, and because I think mutation is an interesting thing to play with, yeah, why not?
Right, but the sound of it is also like straight away Celtic to me. Like if the shoe fits, Bill.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Well, yeah, Celtic in the broad sense, like not Celtic in the Irish sense. But yeah, definitely. Like if the shoe fits, then maybe it's worth doubling down on the Celtic thing.
Yeah.
Does that fit with your setting? Like, is the setting a Celtic-inspired thing? Like, because again, I remember Janspar.
Not at all.
Yeah, I remember Janspar being like a desert thing.
Well, where we set that game was kind of desert. Yeah, in Shiban, in the Shivani Spur, was a desert setting, but it's it's an entire planet.
So yeah. So then.
But I don't really think of things as having, like, for the purpose of Janspar, I try not to have things be direct analogues of existing or previously existing cultures. That's the thing I'm kind of trying to avoid. And I mean, just because it has a Celtic sounding languages doesn't mean, just because it has a Celtic sounding language in my mind doesn't mean it should be tied to being in a Celtic type setting.
Right, right. No, that's very true. And if that's what you're comfortable with, then yeah, that makes perfect sense to do. Cool. Anything else?
Let me just have a quick look over it. No, I think that was the guts of the follow-up. John Lang actually suggested that I make kind of a history of the phonology and like all its related dialects, which sounds like a huge undertaking.
Yup.
And seems a bit beyond my abilities, but he says it's doable, and there's there's good sources for it, and it's definitely the kind of thing I would do given the opportunity.
I mean, on an infinite timescale, Bill, everything's doable. No, congratulations again. I know I said this last show, but it was good. I genuinely enjoyed.
Thank you very much,
I
and thank you to everyone who engaged and commented.
Yeah, it was great. And it was great just reading along as a kind of passive third party as well, because I didn't really want to get involved. It was like this feels very much like a Bill and the Artifexian fans thing, and it was great just reading along. Like, so thoroughly enjoyed, and cannot wait until we get to this week's world building. So, or this month.
I hope it lives up.
It definitely will. It definitely will. Okay, so is that follow up done?
Unless we want to have a quick look at emails.
Oh, emails. Yes, emails. Go.
Okay, so Sam W sent an email. I'm just going to actually double check that's the correct name.
Samwa.
Samwa. Sent an email on the evolution of three eyes. So this is to do with your three-eyed hybrid animals. And was said that on Takar, an early warning system would be a huge advantage in an evolutionary sense. And if we assume that the star has been behaving this way since the evolution of animals, it would probably evolve very quickly and maybe before the evolution of eyes as we know them. Therefore, the third eye would probably serve the dedicated purpose of watching for changes in ultraviolet, while the other two eyes develop and adapt for other purposes. And that's all spot on. And he talks a little bit about the different kinds of eyes evolving in different groups of animals. But my question there would just be, why would it be eye-like? If it evolved beforehand and as a separate structure, why would they evolve to be similar? Why would it evolve to be perceived as an eye?
Yep.
Especially on creatures that like only kind of look in one direction. You know, would it be more useful to have it kind of have their skin sense UV, or just that it would turn into a structure like that closely analogous to an eye for normal light. Would strike me as peculiar if we're going thinking really deeply about the science of this.
Now, I'm gonna just put an end to all talk of three eyes here for a second. I went back to solidify in my head what exactly I had world built on this podcast over the past 6-7 months or whatever. So I went back, started gathering all the data, the things I said, and I realized that the stars, as they were first constructed, are not the type of stars that have that flare. So so this is not an issue.
Whoops.
And I will bring this up in the main topic. So I am going to thank you to Samwa for writing and engaging that way, but I'm going to retcon all the three eye stuff.
Oh no!
Yeah, because it doesn't make any sense anymore. Because so you need to M stars flare.
Right.
And other non-main sequence stars flare, and we're not dealing with them. We're dealing with K stars, and just the hard science nut in me wants to be like, no, that wouldn't be a thing. So I'm gonna have to retcon or make them weird mutations or some weird thing. So
will they still have three eyes?
Probably not.
Oh.
We're sad for my fictional animals.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm going to take away the three eyes.
Okay.
And I'll discuss this further in the main topic. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Anything else?
We've got one email from the Cypher Fox.
That is a cool username.
It's a pretty good username, isn't it?
Yeah, Cypher Fox.
Who is talking about heraldry and just gives us some tips about understanding heraldry. And it says that it's actually really simple.
I don't know.
If you're talking about classical heraldry from a particular era, like medieval from 1100 to 1400.
Yeah, not space heraldry.
Not space heraldry.
No.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're talking about space heraldry, you can make up the rules and you can make it simple if you want.
You can. You are the arbiter of space heraldry.
Also says that I got the order of cause and effect wrong with the development of a knightly class on coats of arms. Coats of arms were developed to distinguish between individuals once they donned their full helmets, and only those who could afford heavy armour needed a coat of arms. And only the affluent could afford the armour, and then they developed to be a separate class over time. I can't remember exactly how I phrased it in the last episode, but that doesn't really contradict anything I said in my mind. Like, it is the marker of an affluent privileged class. So whatever the cause and effect is there, that doesn't change the end result, that it is the marker of, these wealthy privileged people. And I just think that's something worth considering when engaging with heraldry as a concept. Now, the other people contradicted it on the thread for the last episode, which is completely fair, that in some countries that wasn't the case, and it wasn't to do with wearing armor and things, that any peasants or any burghers could have a coat of arms.
Now,
and it was more true in some countries that it was only for the affluent or whatever. But, those are all dimensions that I think are relevant to consider.
Now, I'm going to jump in here with two things, right? And I'll make it quick. Point number one, heraldry. Is heraldry a European thing only? Or do we
I would assume so.
Do we have an analogy to heraldry somewhere else in the world? Because if so, I would be very intrigued to see. Because it's a way, if I understand this correctly, it's a way of marking kind of who you are, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, so surely that would be a thing that other people in other parts of the world would have liked to do, in which case, what are they doing in where heraldry should be, or whatever? Do you understand what I mean?
Like, what was heraldry like in medieval Thailand?
Yeah, or what did they do in place of heraldry, for example, like in place of where a European person would go, that's where you would use heraldry to like identify oneself, and if they weren't using heraldry, what is it that they were doing? I think that's very interesting, and if anyone has any thoughts on that, you can leave that in the sub. I would be very intrigued. That's point number one. Point number two, someone sent, and I don't have the username, and I'll put it in show notes or something to clarify. Someone sent me my coat of arms.
Oh.
Which was nice. The ancient arms of Grunwald. Yeah. And I don't have an eye to distinguish like whether or not this is a nice coat of arms. It's very the Republic flag of the Texas. It's very blue and yellow. And it's got like a prancing unicorny. Is it a unicorn? Hold on. Yeah, a prancing unicorn, and then a helmet and lots of frills, and yeah. Like, it's intriguing that this is a thing that I have been made aware of. I'm not entirely sure how aesthetically pleasing I find the thing, but then again, I don't know if heraldry is a particularly aesthetically pleasing thing. It's quite involved. There's a lot of detail going on,
Yeah.
Which is kind of.
I found here it was iota squiggle.
Iota squiggle. Well done. Real time fact checking there, Bill. Well played.
Real time fact checking. Oh yes, I did see this. Yeah. So it's a yellow, or well, I suppose a gold dancing unicorn on a gold hill against a blue background.
I am just dancing unicorn. You had me at dancing unicorn, Bill. Yeah, so that's the coat of arms of Grunwald. So do we have anything else in the emails? We have 5 more minutes.
No, that's the emails done, and I think that is the follow up complete.
I believe we have completed follow up in a record time today.
We are under 40 minutes.
I am so happy.
Wow.
Brevity is something to be admired. This is great. I'm genuinely smiling here because I can see myself later on in edits being like, "This is so good." You know the way we're meant to like every month do a little bit of world building?
Yeah.
And how I said at the start that some months one of us or both of us may fail at the thing.
Right.
This has been a month where Edgar has failed at the world building. And it's not for lack of trying. So I just want to clarify what's going on. So we had a suggestion in the subreddit about doing governments. Mm-hmm. And you had said about someone else suggesting religion. And I was like, oh, okay, these are interesting ideas. I'll have a pop at that. And because this is kind of low-level stuff, I started working on it and then I realized I don't know enough about my world to be able to say all these things. So I was kind of like, I found myself like backtracking, being like, okay, no, I need to sort out what this will be before I do that thing. And then in sorting out that, I had to go back another level and do all this. And I was like, okay, Edgar, this is chaos, right? You know what you're going to do? You should just document all the stuff you've done so far. Put it in a nice little place where you know what everything is. Solidify it, and then move forward from there. Right?
Good
And
idea.
thank you. And I was like, and I'd like Artifex fans, I should stop saying that. I would like the listeners of Artifexian to be able to see this as well. So I was like, the perfect thing is make a wiki. Make a wiki for Takar that people can see. And oh my God, have you ever tried to make a wiki online?
No.
It's hideous, right? It is the worst process ever. Like, and it's not just a case of you go to wikia.com and you just put in all your things and drop down and drag some things. It's like, it's just the most unresponsive UI ever. So I spent a good couple of nights just failing at creating a wiki. So I've gone back and just worked in VoodooPad and I've started like trying to get all the stuff together from all the things I've said over the past like year or so and put it into this one place so I can have that and then build on that. So this is why I have nothing to present. Other than I named my 2 stars, wait for it, drum roll please, Tack 1 and Tack 2.
Okay.
That's like the extent of the new world building that has been done.
Okay.
Everything else was just gathering data. So I am so thankful, Bill, that you have something to talk about. And so do you want to crack into that?
Okay, well, as Edgar said, someone suggested that we do some religion building, and that is what I've done.
Well, hey,
And
there's
Edgar,
religion on the internet, never an issue. This never causes any problems.
I'm dealing with fictional religions entirely, so I hope that it will be okay.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Edgar, have you read what I sent you?
Yeah, so Bill, in usual Bill manner, wrote a small piece of prose about a religion in the style of in universe, someone writing about a religion they encountered. And yes, I did read this. And
Okay.
and if I pause the show here, guys, and go listen, it'll be linked in the show notes. Or go read, it'll be linked in the show notes.
It'll be on my Tumblr.
It'll be on your Tumblr. Have I got the point of this right? Mm-hmm. Person goes to live with, in quotes, native people.
Okay.
And writes about their religion, how he or she experiences that religion. And it talks about this idea of like when you overcome a foe, one thing that happens is that you like kind of you humiliate their gods or whatever.
Yeah, you desecrate the shrines.
You
etc.
desecrate their shrines and all that sort of jazz. Am I right in thinking here that at the end, the way it's written implies that the person is once again coming to take over the in quotes native people, and they are now desecrating their gods in the manner of the people that they are taking over?
Okay, where have we heard that format before?
In the last show.
2 shows ago.
Oh, was it 2 shows ago? Yeah. This is like another part of that sort of idea.
It is a piece by the same ambassador.
The same guy.
In the same setting, and writing back to the same whoever he's reporting to.
Okay.
So now, if you go back and you read, or if you listen to the 2 episodes ago, where I presented the town of Chapa, and you look at what I wrote about Chapa, and then read this will be another installment in this same individual's reports back to their superior.
Oh, that's great. So now we know that the people who live in Hapa are the Inlami?
Broadly speaking, yes. They're certainly a northern. It's in the northern end of the realm of Nlamo, and as I said in that writing, they kind of don't really consider themselves to be part of it, but functionally they are. But yeah, so we have a name for the country that the envoy is in. We have a name for the king, and we have some details about their religions. And
you have a couple of names of their gods in quotes. You have the Gapo, which is like their leopard spirit. Caro, crocodile spirit. Saasto,
yeah.
Oh, I did the double A right. The snake spirit. Zamodal, the eagle spirit, and Nimata, the elephant spirit. Gee, I envy your ability to name things. Oh my god. It's just like,
I wrote most of those like 2 hours ago. Those names. I had the ideas for the gods, but the names were just like completely beyond me.
so do you want to for the lazy in quotes? Do you want to give a TLDR of this religion system for the people who don't want to read or can't read?
Okay, so in Lamo, in this country where the envoy is, there is no single religion. There isn't a single church. There's no single pantheon even.
No central
There's a lot of
and no centralized institution around that either, I assume.
exactly no centralized
Yeah.
religious institution or authority or infrastructure or anything like that. And it's implied by the writings of the envoy that does exist in his native country, that there is a centralized religion. And so for this reason, because it's kind of a sort of a religious anarchy, there's lots of different variations and lots of different things happen, but it lacks this kind of centralized, what's the word I'm looking for here, prescriptive single idea of worship. He specifically describes 5 of the gods from the western and southwestern regions of the country of Nlamo. So will I just read through them and name each of the ones I've described?
Go for it.
So the first one here is Gaapo, who's the leopard spirit, and he's the patron of the king of Nlamo. He's one of the most popular gods of this kind of interconnected belief system in the west and southwest. I chose the leopard because leopards are big and like powerful animals, but they're also kind of ambush hunters and they're stealthy. So it represents wisdom and cunning alongside brute strength.
Okay. Yep.
And that's that's kind of what the followers perceive as ideals, and that's what they look to the god for. This combination of intelligence and power.
Now, I'm going to jump in here just earlier in your prose. You write a little bit about how they don't have an idea of like Gapo is the god of X. It's like
Yeah.
their gods they have multifunctions. It's like the impression I get is that they are like the god of everything. Like every god is the god of everything, and you just take one of them. They become your personal god. So Gapo, for one, whoever takes that god is their god of war, agriculture, love, fertility, the whole shebang.
Yeah, more or less.
Okay.
Like, obviously, some gods will have certain things that they would be seen as better as than others. Like, you might pray to a certain god when you're, for protection on the roads, or you might pray to a certain god for another thing. But it's not like that Gapo is the god of strength, or any other god is the god of the weather, or the god of the sky. It's more to do with these are the gods of places or of people. So the people that follow them will pray to them for a good harvest, and they'll pray to them for a good weather, and so on and so on.
And
So it's getting a little bit away from the traditional idea that we have in fantasy and that we have from kind of our interpretations of Greek and Roman mythologies and things, that the gods are the gods of X. It's not quite the same as that.
Yeah, which stuck out of me straight away on first reading. I was like, oh, that's an interesting little like slant on things. Real life precedent for that, or is that something you've just made up?
I don't know exactly if there's real life precedent for it, but I do think that we tend to have a quite limited idea of how religion and faith works as sort of modern Westerners. Like in even taking our own kind of cultural religious heritage, like the Israelites didn't believe that Jehovah was the only God. It was just Jehovah was the only God that they worshipped. There's a lot of evidence that for a lot of history they believed in the existence of other gods but didn't worship them.
Right.
So that they were like, yeah, Baal exists, but Baal is not our God. So I was kind of building on that sort of idea. And also, now I could be completely wrong here, but I've read stuff to the effect that the idea that you are one religion or another is quite a modern Western concept. That this kind of strict prescriptive idea that you are a Christian, or you are a pagan, or you are Jewish, or whatever, and that even in modern times in parts of Asia, they're not seen as mutually exclusive in that way, and they're seen as like revealing different things which are equally valid.
That's very. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't
That's
it?
very interesting. That kind of blows my mind. Like I'm kind of thinking, like,
Yeah.
how do people function like that? Because you're so used to this prescriptive idea that you are in box X,
Yeah.
or not in a box at all if you choose to be like that. But yeah, that's interesting. You can kind of like chop and change sort of thing, and you can find a home in any religion. That's really, yeah, it's fascinating, huh?
Yeah. And I'm perfectly open to being corrected in this, but I have heard stuff to the effect that there's a lot of people in Japan will practice both Christianity and Shinto, and there's not seen as there being a contradiction between that.
Shinto.
It's a Japanese religion.
Okay, okay, right. Yeah, that's really cool. That's kind of really nice. It's just really, sounds really inclusive. Like,
And
go
go
on.
on.
No, you go on.
And so I was just building on that idea because I obviously, me being me, I kind of build it up, but it was like, well, when I'm world building here, let's interrogate the actual base thing here rather than just like adding facts. I wanted to kind of think about how this concept of religion works and other ways that religion could work rather than just like switching around the facts and saying I've made a new religion.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and it's good world building practice as a whole because to throw up the lens and have it be commentary on real life sort of stuff. I have a point/criticism.
Okay.
Oh boy. So you talked earlier about like you want to move away from kind of stereotype analog type things, like if these people are in a desert, they're going to be analogs of Arabian people or whatever.
Sure.
Are you not kind of sort of doing that here, like stereotyping in a way that like it seems, and this was the case 2 shows ago, it seems very much like you have Native American people and then the what you call Westerners coming over, and the way you write about this group, the Nalami, it kind of your words again imply that like the leopard spirit, the crocodile spirit, and the fact that it's no centralized thing and it's very it all strikes me like it's very kind of Native American informed, and then part of me is kind of like, well, why don't we have a stronger twist on that, a stronger sort of like I'm unable to place this culture in the real world, like this is something that is a unique invention and has no analog.
Well, okay, so that statement about not wanting to make analogs was regarding Janspar.
Oh, are we not? I thought we're still in Janspar here. No.
No, this is Handwavia.
Oh, this is Hamwavia. Oh, I'm sorry.
This is Handwavia. This and Chapa are both in Handwavia.
Oh, okay, right, grand. So the different rules of the game apply.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not too keen on presenting like direct analogs, but I'm less concerned about that than I am in Janspar. Like Handwavia is a little bit more free. Ultimately, it's a little bit more straight fantasy, and I'm less precious about how I'm presenting it.
Okay.
But that said, it's not Native Americans and Westerners.
But it sounds so much like that from the outside.
Okay, not what it is.
And like, but what? So if it's not Native Americans and Westerners, what was your base? Where did you start with here? Or are you revealing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can reveal it because I did say that I think a couple of episodes ago that I'd talk about it in a future episode. Okay, well, look at the animals. What spirits are there?
Leopard, crocodile, snake, eagle, elephant. Like it sounds African.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's rather than being Native American, Nlamo is very, very broadly and without like intending to represent any facts about anything in the real world, very, very broadly inspired by impressions of South Africa or Southern Africa.
Right, okay, so therein kind of maybe lies my problem. This idea of impressions, that it's kind of like the impression we get of people who are not Western Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
we think that people who are not Western and we think of like traditional religions, we're like, oh, they're going to be very spirit based and it's going to be like very lots of animals going on and it's not going to be centralized and it's very personal. Whereas perhaps it would be not, I don't want to use the word better because your writing's very good, but a more interesting idea to be like animal spirits, blah blah blah. But there is a centralized power, for example, that kind of jars you out of the real world. And you're like, huh, I can't really place this in where it is in the real world. Whereas this is okay, yeah, Native American, I was wrong, but it does have this sort of like getting down with the natives feel that I feel.
Yes.
That I feel.
And there's
Yeah, sorry, go on.
that's deliberate in a way, because the envoy is meant to have a sort of colonialist perspective on it. His writing is coming from a colonialist mindset.
Yeah, okay. So I'm sorry. This in universe writing thing always gets me. Okay, right. So it, so they, the Nalamo themselves may well not be what we think, like me and you in the real world think of being in quotes a native people. They may well be
Yeah.
way more diverse, but it's just that this guy might be a bit of a bigot,
Yeah.
and he
Th-
just
th-
and he has no subtlety when it comes to other cultures.
that's an element of it. And also, I was actually like I describe one religious ceremony in it, and in some of what I said, now not choosing the animals. That's certainly something that seems more like colonialist perspectives on Africa and Native America. But in terms of how I was thinking of the religion, I was thinking of old European religions, like pre-Christian European religions, and that was more of an impulse in my description of the ceremony for in particular.
And again, for people not reading the ceremony, this is the one with the caged leopard, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's describing a ceremony held by the king to celebrate an anniversary of his reign. And as I said, his patron is the leopard spirit. So they have they throw a great feast, and there's a caged leopard is given prize of place at the feast, beside the king, and they, the leopard is given food along with the people, and is dressed in blessed garlands of flowers. And then afterwards, there's drumming, and the beast is let go back into the wild, and all of the celebrants, they drink a hallucinogenic tea. And
Ayahuasca.
Not specifically.
That's immediately what I thought. Though. I was like, they're drinking ayahuasca. Excellent.
Well, I mean, there are other hallucinogens.
This is true.
They drink a hallucinogenic tea, and then the visions that they have are recorded by the cultists and the scribes of the cultists, and used to kind of divine the future. And I was thinking much more about kind of stuff I've read about old European kind of pagan practices and things.
Oh, is that? Oh, it's derived from pagan practices. That's interesting. I suppose.
Well, I'm pretty sure there was like religious use of is it ethnogens is the term, in ancient Europe. So
Yeah, I mean, this is. It doesn't surprise me because we as a people like entering into altered states, and we usually prescribe a little bit too much meaning to those altered states than is logical or correct. Which blows my mind. Like the concept of like way back when there was like whatever ayahuasca or whatever, or some hallucinogen. It's kind of like
psilocybin in Europe.
Psilocybin. I never heard of psilocybin.
Magic mushrooms.
It's like, oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, magic mushrooms are called psilocybin.
Or psilocybin, perhaps. Yeah, that's the name of the fungus.
Huh. I should make that the title for this episode, and people are like, what?
So we've got Gapo, the leopard spirit, who is as I said, the patron of the king and the king's kind of native region. He's one of the most popular gods in this extended family that I've briefly described. He represents wisdom alongside strength, and he's traditionally an enemy of Karo, the crocodile spirit, and an ally of Saasto, the snake spirit, and Zamodal, the eagle spirit.
Okay.
So Karo is another popular god, the crocodile spirit. He's seen as more cunning and sly than the leopard. And their followers don't trust each other. In the stories, they're kind of, as I said, set up as rivals in the mythologies, and their followers tend to not get along.
But they don't tend to get along because of the gods, or they just don't get along and the god rhetoric has built up around it?
Who knows?
Who knows?
And the cultists and followers of Karo are believed to have the most powerful magics.
Okay.
Then we have Saasto, the snake spirit, who is an ally of Gapo, the leopard. Not many. He's not a popular god as anyone's primary god. Not many people have him as their number one patron, but he's often worshipped as a secondary spirit alongside Gapo.
So multiple worship then is fine here.
Yeah, absolutely. And even someone who like worships Gapo primarily might pray to another god for some specific reason.
Right. Yeah. Like we said earlier. Yeah.
The two are often present together in many stories, and they're depicted together in art. And it's part of what he is kind of the idea that even smaller creatures can have power, because snakes can be poisonous, and even though they're not big, they can be a threat to animals much larger than them.
Okay. Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Or is that the end of the snake description?
That's the end of the snake description.
Yeah. Okay. I want to jump in here for a second. You mentioned magic a second ago.
Yeah.
So I want to just interrogate this a bit further. Magic in a like pure magical sense, as in the supernatural, does it exist in this world? Or is it magic the way like some people think there's magic in real life?
I would say it actually exists.
Can't tell you that now. Let's wait 2 podcasts.
No, I would say that it probably actually exists.
Okay, and then the way you're speaking about the gods currently, and not so much from the writing, but just the way you're speaking about it, makes me feel like these gods are like actually real.
Okay.
Like you can actually go to them and they can appear and you can interact with these spirits. Is that the case, or are they just standard like deity in the sky sort of thing?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure. Okay.
And yeah, I don't know. That's something that's kind of worth interrogating, I think.
Because you mentioned before it was a fantasy thing, and the more you speak, the more I'm kind of like, oh, these just seem like mythical creatures that roam the world, anyways. So yeah, that'd be an interesting take that they're actually real and you can actually talk to them.
Okay.
Just my thing, my little nugget there. Do you want to go on to the eagle spirit?
Yeah. So the eagle spirit is an aloof god, and prefers to reward worshippers who are able to fend for themselves. So if the way to be a good follower of Zamodal is to actually just like be a powerful person and be able to make your own way, and by making your own way, Zamodal will reward you further.
And this is, I might need to cut this for the sake of inflaring religious conversations. Is this like the atheist god?
No?
This isn't the god that's kind of like a placeholder god where it's kind of like you kind of do your own thing and don't really worry about the gods sort of god?
No, I hadn't thought of it that way.
Okay.
So I'm sure it could be open to that interpretation, but that wasn't my creative impulse.
Okay, because the minute you said it there, it's kind of like, oh, he's put in a little element for atheist worshippers. Atheist worshippers?
People who worship atheists.
People who worship atheists. But it sounds like, yeah, you've one there that like particularly non-pious people could be drawn towards that spirit, which sounds really interesting.
Right.
Like that people who don't dig the whole religion thing can still kind of partake in the club, so to speak, and derive whatever it is you derive from it without, going whole hog.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's definitely a possible interpretation.
Okay, cool.
So that was Zamodal, and Nimata is an elephant spirit. Is the elephant spirit.
The elephant spirit.
She's a primary deity more towards the Midlands, like the central part of the country, but is quite popular in the west and southwest of where these other gods are worshipped. Popular among nomads and plains villages. She's slow to anger, but represents great force when aroused. She's kind of distant from the squabbles and conflicts of the other gods, but has fought or defended most of the others at one time or another.
I think it's really interesting that you made the elephant spirit a female deity.
Okay.
It seems to be, we think of elephants as being like, sturdy, strong, to have like traditional sort of masculine values in a way. And I think it's kind of nice that you subverted that.
Okay.
And made the deity a female spirit. Because, like, I think automatically you'd think of, I don't know, you think of the snake maybe as being female because of, like, the sort of fricative noises it makes, and it's more kind of, like, sensual or whatever sort of nonsense normative coding.
And because there's a lot of, like, Ophidian female gods in mythology, and the association of the snake and Eve and Christianity, etc.
And all that normative nonsense. But it's kind of cool that you have, but it's kind of cool that you've subverted it here. I don't know if that's intentional, but like I certainly would have said elephant equals male straight away, which is nonsense, really, and it shows my
your own gender programming.
My own gender programming as much as I want to fight it. So I think that's really cool. That's the first thing. The second thing is, this is the only god that you've specifically gendered. And is that something that is pertinent? Like, are the rest of them non-gender, or the rest of them whatever?
Gapo is gendered.
Oh, sorry, I didn't. He? Did you say he?
His followers.
I missed his. Sorry, but most of them seem to be pretty vague here, Bill. So is it a thing that these gods have really no gender, or people assign their own gender to the god when they worship? Is there anything going on here in this regard?
I had thought of the others as male. Okay. And these are not the only, like, it's not just like four dudes and a girl. These aren't the only gods. These are just the five that I've described so far. I might even write more before the podcast goes live.
Right, yeah, no, I figured this weren't the only gods.
But these were the first ones that came to me, and the relationships between them were the first relationships that arose. I had thought of the others as male. I hadn't thought of them as being the gods here as being genderless. I had thought of them as being specifically gendered.
Okay, just now let's say
that's a thing I've played with elsewhere. The idea that they don't have fixed presentations is definitely something I've played with elsewhere, but not as regards the gods of Nlamo.
And it's a cool thing to play with, like, in a way that, especially when you go with the personal god, it's like you can literally assign what makes you to that god.
Yeah.
Which I think is a very interesting idea.
Yeah, like it will be, especially with as personal a religion as personal a religious mindset as I've presented in Nlamo, that you could assign aspects of your own identity to it without contradiction. Like, whatever your gender identity is, whatever your kind of profession is, all these different aspects of identity, that they could all sort of be summed up somehow. Yeah, that's definitely a
thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that would be something cool to explore. So I have more points about this.
Go for it.
God, I love talking about your writing, man. Your writing, that's really great.
Thank you.
The guy, do we have a name for this envoy?
Barus Kisma.
Barus Kisma.
I think so.
Barus Kisma.
It's not a tonal language. Well, it's not yet tonal language yet, his language. Maybe it will be in the end. Yeah, Barus Kisma.
Interesting. Tonal language. There we go. So Barus seems like not the most pleasant of chaps.
Okay.
Or at least the whole military campaign he is involved in is not the most pleasant of endeavors. My question is, and I know already the answer to this is going to be like, I can't reveal that at this point, but I would love to hear or read a piece from Barus that has like a redeeming quality to it. Like, he writes to a friend, not back to his superiors, but to a friend, and is kind of like, the more I spend time with these people, the more I see them as humans and not just as fodder to be trampled over. And
okay.
I am questioning my role within my society and wondering what to do. That would be really interesting, because so far it's been like Barus writes about what he's noted, and then he puts in a horrific twist.
Yeah, it's like, here's the things I've seen, and here's how we can use it to win a war.
Yeah, exactly, right. But not even a war. Like, it strikes me like as a genocide sort of thing. It's like, here's how we just wipe these people out. And so it's like, it would be really cool to have Barus do a 180, or at least think about doing a 180, and to put that thought in writing. And it'd be really interesting to see what aspect of the Nlamo people make him flip? Like, what causes him to be like, actually, there is great wealth in this culture? That would
The
be
demonym is the Enlami.
the Enlami. Sorry.
The Enlami.
But I think that would be a really interesting thing, and I just want to put it out there. That's something I would enjoy reading. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. But yeah, but over that, I think that's all I have to say about that. It's great, man. It's really good.
Thank you very much.
Really good.
Thank you very much.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot.
Did you find the language as kind of obtuse as the previous ones I've written, or have I gotten more streamlined and more coherent?
The language, as in like your prose.
Yeah, like the other way, I'm affecting a somewhat archaic kind of tone.
Yeah, for the listener, can I tell the listener about the story?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Bill once sent me a piece of prose, a similar vein, like in-universe thing, and it was...
Sorry, my headphone fell out.
So Bill sent me this piece of prose, in-universe thing. It was... And man, I love you, man, right? But I'm going to kind of slightly put you underneath the bus here. It was extremely difficult to read because it was the language was really archaic and lots of like really big compound sentences with just very kind of unfriendly language.
Okay.
Very, very hard to get into.
Was this the thing about plagues?
It could well have been. I can't remember.
Right, yeah. That's on the Anspar blog anyway, if people are curious. I think it was the thing about plagues.
It could be, and I remember writing to you, replying to you, and being like, "Yeah, this is hard to get into. It's very, very, yeah, it's not easy to get into." And your writing, I'm not going to say has gotten better. It's gotten more Edgar friendly, because other people really might dig that aesthetic. Like this goes back to the Naomi Watts book. So Watts, the dragon book, the Pride and Prejudice meets Dragons.
Naomi Novik.
I keep saying Naomi Watts. Naomi Novik.
Is that like an actor, Naomi Watts?
I don't know. I have no idea. We'll even follow up for next time. What's it called? Yeah, like that. Remember
She's an actor.
Is she an actor? Remember we talked about how for me that whole language, the whole kind of like antiquated thing, just was so isolating, and I didn't get into it. But you obviously dig it, and lots of people dig that sort of effect. So I don't want to say that this has gotten better, but it's gotten easier to read, much easier to read, and I kind of appreciate the simplistic sort of narrative things in it, like as in Bruce is writing observations, twist, like horror happens, like that's a really easy thing to engage with, and which is good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, part of my issue with this thing that I do is that because I have, say, within Handwavia so far, I only have one voice. I only have Barus so far. And as I said, I'm a little bit less precious about Handwavia. It's a little bit more playful for me. But for Janspar, I have, I think, currently 3 or 4 voices. I haven't necessarily written for all of them. And then a couple of other, like, isolated documents. And they need to be slightly separate in their styles because they're from different cultures and from different eras. So I have to kind of manage a couple of different types of archaic language. And it is quite a writing challenge. Probably one that's like stupid for me to attempt because I don't really write that much. But yeah, so it is a challenge. Certainly, Barus is a lot easier than the plague thing that I wrote.
Yeah, very, very much so. Yeah,
I think that's probably the most kind of obtuse thing that I've written so far because in the context of the universe it's set in, it is the most archaic document I've written.
I mean, I think at this point we got to link this in the show notes. Can we link this in the show notes?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because just see what other people think. Because again, I'm pretty sure there'll be a whole raft of people who are kind of like, oh, I totally dig this, man. This is like Tolkien on steroids. It's all good. Keep it coming. And whereas I'm like short, clean sentences. Like I derive no more, and I realize this is like you can't do this because you're going for the whole aesthetic feel that you've just outlined. But I derive so much pleasure if and when I write, if I can write something in just the concisest, clean most clean way. Like I remember Artifexian scripts and just being like, if I can make a point with just even a single word, it's just beautiful. Like
Absolutely.
one word.
And that's a marvelous skill.
Really? Oh, here. No, hold on. Without
To
getting
be able to communicate that concisely, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I see. Okay, I'm not saying I can do that really well, but I find it a skill the opposite way to be able to like eloquently go on about your point, whereas I like kind of can't really do that. I'm like, here's the point, full stop, done, move on, and there's no like kind of like interesting evocative language. It's all very simple words and all that sort of jazz. Whereas. Yeah, that's interesting that you find that as a skill. Like I don't know. There you go. But yeah, anyhow, so religion building, I like it. Aside from the little criticisms I pointed out about like perhaps it's a bit too stereotypically native in quotes. But again we've hashed through that. So but yeah, overall I really enjoyed it. Thanks you, man.
Thank you.
And we'll wait to see what the raft of responses in the Reddit will be like. Bill, you have an interesting story about your travels to London that involve some metal music, and I think you should totally need to tell everyone about it.
Okay. Fine. So, I took a trip to London this weekend just past. And the purpose of the trip was to like see friends and stuff, but it coincided nicely with a concert by a band that I like.
And this band is?
This band is Primordial. They're an Irish metal band. They've been on the go for ages. They're kind of doomy metal, I guess.
Links in the show notes.
Yeah. And they sing a lot about Irish history and stuff. And it's really, really good music and really interesting. I get a very strong emotional response from them. And I don't get a lot of emotional response from music.
I was just about to say, you're not one for the old emotional response.
No, not generally. But the first time I saw Primordial, there's this one song that they do, and the lyrics really moved me and it filled me with like manly patriotic feelings, which again, it's like totally kind of alien to my day-to-day experience. So this is one of the reasons I really like them. But I was going over anyway, and I was flying from Dublin to Stansted, and I was in the queue for the boarding queue to get on the plane, and there's a bunch of metalheads behind me. And I just kind of saw them, and it was like, oh, a bunch of metalheads. I assume they're probably traveling together. They must be going over to see the Primordial concert. Mm-hmm. And so I say to the guy who's like directly behind me, it's like, oh, you going to see Primordial? And he goes, yeah, kind of smiles politely, doesn't really say much. And I was like, yeah, I thought, fair enough. And so I'm go down and getting on the plane. And as I'm going up the steps to get on the plane, I realize that they aren't Primordial fans. They're Primordial. The band. I was wearing a Primordial t-shirt, and I asked Primordial if they were going to the Primordial gig.
Oh god, that's I'm so glad that happened. It's so funny. Like
in my defense, right, I only really saw one of them clearly, and the only one who I know to look at, like from the only one who I can like recognize to see is the singer, and I couldn't see him from like the way the queue was, and he ended up sitting a little bit in front of me on the plane, and he had like a hood up and he had like big sunglasses and stuff on, so he wasn't like particularly recognizable, but it just occurred to me as I was walking down like towards the stairs, like, wait, there's a bunch of them. They're not, are they? And so like I really quickly like I looked them up and I was like, yeah, that's that guy that I was talking to.
I had this image that like you were kind of like, oh, I met the metal fans, that's great, and then you went to the concert and you're there like moshing away, and then suddenly it kind of hits you, look at one of them, you're like, that's the guy from the plane. But like, I'm glad you noticed it. Did you go up to them afterwards and be like,
no, I don't like to like talk to people who are just doing a thing, and like I don't like to, like, if someone's like kind of famous for some reason or well known for some reason, I don't like to talk to them and bother them when they're just going about their day.
Look, this is the thing I said at the beginning with the Artifexian fan I giggled in the direction of. Like, I genuinely appreciate the fact that he was kind of like, oh, you are Artifexian, that's great, and then we both continued on with our days, because it's like, it's an asymmetric thing going on there, and it's a really weird, bizarre social situation. So I definitely think that that's the correct way of doing things. Like if you meet someone famous, you're just kind of like go up, say hi, and then I really like your work, and then that's it. And then
Yeah.
because otherwise it just gets really fucking awkward. Like I think, but there you go. They were primordial.
But anyway, my friend that I went to the show with is a metal scholar, and like I know her through metal scholarship. So I'll ask her, and I'm sure she'll let us link the review she wrote of the gig that we went to.
Was it a good
And
gig?
we can put it in the show notes. Oh yeah, it was a really good gig. Really enjoyed it.
Primordial and anyone warming up who was.
Yeah, there was a band called Crom Dove, who I didn't know before, and I thought they were pretty good.
Hang on.
They didn't make a huge.
Crom Dove, something black.
Yeah, like Black Crom. I think Crom is like a personal name.
Okay, right, okay, grand, yeah. Yeah, Irish, for anyone who is wondering.
Yeah, sorry. They didn't make a huge impression on me until the end of their set. They closed their set with a really, really good song. Then the second band were Fen, who I hadn't heard before and I really enjoyed. There was this kind of sort of black metal, but with this kind of like ambient elements incorporated into it. Black Gaze is what it was called when it was really big a few years ago. And then Primordial were the final band. And yeah, just like they said really interesting, like the way he speaks about Irish history and stuff and the way he speaks about events is really powerful to me. But right, I genuinely think that I might have some kind of face problem, because after the gig was over, like after Primordial finished their set, we went to the merch table to like buy a Fen t-shirt. I'd already bought a Primordial t-shirt at the start, and I only buy band merchandise at gigs, and I liked Fen so much I decided to take one of their shirts. Mm-hmm. And I went up, and my friend was talking to the guys at the merch table, and it took me like a minute to realise that it was Fen. It was the actual band. So I think I just have some kind of like problem recognising musicians.
Oh, that's hilarious. I hope,
and they were lovely. Nice bunch of guys.
Yeah, do you know what? I don't really go to concerts at all, really, or like metal and pop concerts and all that jazz. I go to classical concerts, obviously.
For work, yeah.
For work and all that. I get the impression that the metal scene is really lovely. It's really nice, and everyone is really pally, and it's really easy to meet the musicians and things like that. I have a friend on Facebook who's constantly like, oh, I went to this gig, here's a picture of me with Trivium, and here's a picture of me with this other band, and here's me trying out this guy's guitar at a gig I was at. And he's just a randomer, like he's not like opening up for any of these bands. So I get the impression it's easy to bump into them, like obviously more so than like if you went to an Adele concert.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah, I think there's less of a distance between fans and performers in a lot of cases.
Yeah, which is something which is really nice. It's really cool to have. It's a nice community, and this is the thing with so many. Like on the surface, metal is this like really aggressive, hostile sort of sound.
Yeah,
and the whole like moshing and the whole thing is just aggression. All this, it's always my experience. The things that are like always overtly one way tend to actually be the other way. So like metal is overtly very aggressive, but when you actually get into metal and meet people who are into metal, they tend to be just the loveliest folk. You know?
Yeah.
Which is great, which is really cool. And it drives me nuts when people who are out of touch are kind of like, metal is evil. It's like you don't understand.
Yeah,
you know,
it can be. I mean, there are definitely problems within the community and within the scene and stuff. But
but there's problems.
I've generally found it to be a welcoming and a fun kind of place. I mean, there's elitism and stuff, and there's it can be quite hostile to women and to anyone who isn't a white dude. In some places, not as a general thing.
Yeah, but also this is not like a problem unique to metal. This is kind of a problem unique to our society, or not unique, but it's a societal problem as well.
Endemic to our society, yeah. But I think it should still be acknowledged that it does exist within metal as part of that,
and try to make it better, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's great, man. I just love that you met two bands, and both times kind of like. Oh, it's
I did
brilliant.
other things in London as well.
Do you want to
Actually, can I
go?
tell you something super cool?
You tell me everything you want to tell me.
I played one of the nights I was staying with some friends and we played Settlers of Catan, right?
Best game.
Yeah, it's a fun game, right? But actually, no, I tell a slight lie. We didn't play Settlers of Catan.
We played Monopoly.
No, we played Osadnichi za Catanu,
So the Japanese version of Settlers.
the Polish version,
Oh, why did that sound really Japanese to me? Okay, the Polish version of Settlers. Right. Okay.
right? I don't speak Polish,
No, you don't.
obviously.
Yes.
And when you get like the progress cards and like the special benefit cards that you can buy, so the rules are in Polish, and I didn't want to be like asking the people I was playing with to explain it to me because then they'd know what cards I had. But if you get the Google Translate app on your phone, you can take a photograph of text and it will translate text from a photograph. So I pulled a knight, I think, and I wasn't exactly sure how the knight worked. So I took a photo of it and Google Translate translated the rules on the card for me.
Is this a revelation to you?
I never knew this before. Isn't that cool?
Now you see that is cool, but I've become so accustomed to like the intricacies of translation software because of the captain, and she's constantly filling me in about like, oh, I had this run in with this Korean person, and we ended up sorting it out through this software.
Right.
So it is cool. The luster has somewhat lessened for me.
But I can do it from a photograph.
But
It's
hang on,
class.
no, hang on, man. What you need to go is you need to go one step more. I don't know the name of the app, but it's a VR app, and you don't take a picture of the thing. You hold the phone up to the thing, and it recognizes the text, translates it, and overlays your translation onto what you're seeing.
Dude,
The robots,
freaky.
the robots are taking over, man.
That's freaky.
It's amazing. Like, it's so cool. The captain was like translating various ingredients lists on food products and just hold up the phone and it replaces it with English. Now it's not perfect because no kind of machine learning thing is flawless at the moment, especially when it comes to language translation. But it's
Yeah.
like it's quite mind blowing when it gets it right. You're kind of like, oh boy, that is pretty cool.
And what else did I want to say about London? I went to Greenwich and I saw an old sailing ship called the Cutty Sark. That was class.
I know that
it
name
was
from somewhere.
It was the fastest sailing ship in Victorian times.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was like it's been restored and it's like permanently moored or permanently like dry moored in Greenwich, and you can go underneath it as well, which is class.
It had go faster planks. Made it go quick.
And I saw lots of clocks, weirdly.
Okay.
Then just kind of by coincidence. Well, so I went to see the Cutty Sark and I bought a combined ticket for the Cutty Sark and the Royal Observatory, thinking that I saw a Royal Observatory on the sign, and my brain went, "That's the Maritime Museum." But of course, it isn't the Maritime Museum. The Royal Observatory is the Royal Observatory, and the Maritime Museum is called the Maritime Museum. Now, they're both in Greenwich, but there's loads of stuff in Greenwich. And I really wanted to see the Maritime Museum because of my whole sailing and Napoleonic Navy thing. But anyway, I bought the ticket to the observatory, so I went up there instead. And it's really interesting, and it has like the Harrison timepieces that like solved the longitude problem in the late 1700s, so that people could actually like navigate by longitude, which wasn't possible before. And they had like a big thing about time, and that's where like Greenwich Mean Time is calculated from a line running through the Royal Observatory.
Yeah.
That was pretty interesting. And then the next day I went to the Science Museum, and they had a huge thing about like the clockmakers and the watchmakers of London. And then there was a thing about the Information Age, and they had a couple of different like clocks and watches and things in the Information Age. And then the following day I went to the British Museum, and they had a big thing about clocks. So there's like four separate like museum things I saw concerning clocks in 3 days. But it was interesting.
I saw a clock recently, right? And it was a 24-hour analog clock.
So it was like 1 to 24 rather than 1 to 12 twice.
Exactly, 1 to 24.
Yeah.
And I looked at it, I was like, that's a standard clock. And then the more I looked at it, I was kind of like, oh, that's really weird. it's really strange looking. Like you have to completely like just it seems obvious because of different layout, but you completely change like how you view time. Like I view 2 o'clock as being like in the first quadrant of the circle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As in, like when someone says "be there at 2," an image of a clock pops up in my head, and 2 is that part of the circle, and I know that that represents like daytime,
Yeah.
right? Whereas with the 24-hour clock, it's kind of like, 1400. It's like all the way down. Oh, it's really weird, like, and you're kind of like, oh, that just I don't know, it just completely makes you rethink time.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan of those type of clocks like that do that. There's one that was mentioned on Hello Internet before, the Slow Watch or whatever, and I believe this is a clock that does not have a minute hand.
Oh.
It just has an hour hand. The whole ethos is like time is what you make it. You don't have to know things down to the nearest minute. It's meant to just be more of a Zen thing or whatever. And I really like how just design changes on clock faces can inform how we think about time, and it's a really interesting concept for me to engage with. And
You
even
miss
as
your bus though.
you'd miss the well, no, but you have like your phone and stuff. But what I mean is like when you're like, oh, I'm in a hurry, and you like look at your clock. It's like the clock, and it tells you you're somewhere around 2 o'clock. It just
Yeah.
causes you to be like, it's okay, it's fine. And I think it's quite a cool. That obviously it's really hipster, but it's kind of cool thing in the modern world to just like treat time that way. And I remember when I was younger as well. It's kind of like the concept of a clock without any numbers. That was the first time I was kind of like, you rethink time slightly there. Like time is positional as opposed to numeric. Do you know what I mean? And that's really interesting as well. So it goes to my whole shtick about liking design, how design affects how we engage with a thing. But yes, clocks. No, not ornithology. Horology. Horology. No,
Horology.
is it horology?
Horology.
There's a fella in college. He's currently second level now, and he is not considering a career in music, despite the fact that I think that he is quite a good musician. He is considering a career in horology.
Cool. Like actually, like manually making mechanical clocks.
Manually, well, I'm assuming his life will pan out that he's going to be fixing.
Yeah.
Rather than making. But yes, it involves like learning how to construct like grandfather clocks and maintain them and all that sort of thing. Like, which
That's
is
cool.
which is really cool. Like, it's totally a dying art here, but like, it's cool that someone wants to do it.
Yeah. And part of the exhibit, particularly in the Royal Observatory, or one of the exhibits they had was like looking at time and looking at the different kind of, how time has how our perceptions and how our conceptions of time have changed over history. And obviously, me being me, that interrogate the base idea here, that I found that quite interesting. Like there was no need for like second accuracy in the 1400s. You didn't even really need to know what hour it was in a lot of respects in the 1400s. Like, it was just, it's the morning and I just do this stuff in the morning and then I'll be hungry and I'll have lunch and then the bells will ring for noon or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that could be an interesting thing to people consider for world building.
Exactly. And I think another interesting thing is about like, especially if you're doing world building to like interrogate how we do things in the real world, like the idea of like divisions of the day. And what would be, like you were saying, like what's kind of optimal the divisions, like interrogating the idea, like, is an hour actually relevant? Like, is it too much or too little? Is 12 divisions or 24, as the case may be, is that too many or too much? Like, what would function if you half that? Like, what would happen if you doubled that? Which I think is very interesting. And something people don't really engage in that much because it's kind of like an hour is just an hour, and I think people are just kind of like, that's a set amount. It took it took 2 hours to get here, and no one ever questions that perhaps in your world that hours mean something different,
Yeah, and I think people would question that even less than they question things like weights and distances and measures and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Because sometimes you do see that. Sometimes you do see, like in the Wheel of Time, there's their measurement system is slightly different.
Yeah, you see. Well, I mean, you see stuff like I don't know if it's questioning, but you see stuff like putting back in archaic forms of measurement, like leagues and things like that. But yeah, you don't.
But like in the Wheel of Time, he uses the same terminology, but they have different absolute meanings. Like
Okay.
inches and feet don't mean the same thing as they do in like speaking English using the imperial system.
That's quite an interesting way of doing it because it means that
Yeah.
if you really want to get into it, you can try and understand that. But if you don't,
Yeah.
you can still just your head canon can just be like an inch is an inch and that's it.
Yeah, and like it's roughly similar. Like you're not going to be completely off, but it's not exactly the same.
Right, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Like an inch is the distance from the top of your finger to your palm, as opposed to whatever thumb or whatever
Yeah.
it is based on. That's actually a really interesting concept. Keep the same nomenclature, but just define it differently, so people have the option to interpret it how they will.
Yeah. There's an interesting this is going a little bit further off topic, but there's an interesting argument, not an argument exactly, but point relating to that in a Neil Stevenson book. He wrote
Okay.
this book called Anathema, and it's set on a planet that is not Earth. Um, but it uses a lot of like normal concepts, like carrots and rabbits and things. And there's like a note of translation or something near the beginning of it where it says, "Look, we're just we're translating this into English. It's not actually talking about a carrot, but the concept is close enough that we can say carrot. It'll mean roughly the right thing, and you'll get the gist of what we're talking about."
Yeah, like when they say carrot, they don't mean steak. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
They mean some sort of root vegetable.
Yeah, they mean like a slightly sweet root vegetable
Right.
that is, pretty much the same as the carrots that are on Earth.
But pink.
Potentially, I don't know. Carrots used to be blue, or purple or something.
Carrots used to be blue?
Yeah, I think so. I think
Did
there's something
they?
about them being orange. It was a favored breed because orange was the Dutch royal color, and they were imported through Holland or something like that.
Get out. I questioned
so.
I questioned the blue though. Not many things are blue. IRL.
Blue potatoes, but they're specifically made to be blue.
Well, I suppose. And also the definition of blue is pretty loose sometimes. Like when people say like, "Oh, I have a blue cat," it's like, "You've a grey cat, sir." It's not really blue.
Maybe they're more like purple, the way like aubergines are.
Could be, yeah, exactly. Or like purple cabbage. Could be that purple. I don't know.
Like red cabbage.
No, like purple cabbage. Wait, hang
Is
on.
that different to red cabbage?
Is it now? You're making me question things.
I don't know.
Jeez. Edgar doesn't understand vegetables or color. That's the case with me.
So I think that's all of my green room topics.
I'm checking up on the cabbage. Now you see, this thing looks to me like purple cabbage. Like Google purple cabbage there.
Okay, and I'll see if it looks the same as red cabbage to me. Purple cabbage. Yeah, and also one of the autocomplete selections was... Yeah, it's the same thing. Red cabbage, also known as purple cabbage.
Oh, okay, great. So I know it as purple cabbage.
But yeah, if you I put in purple CA, and purple carrots was one of the suggestions.
Oh. Okay,
It
yes.
originally comes from Afghanistan.
So I suppose if that's not photoshopped in any way, they're more purple than blue. Like you don't really get ultramarine. That's the word I'm looking for, isn't it?
Ultramarine is very, very blue, yeah.
It's very blue. You don't really get ultramarine carrots, ultramarine vegetables in real life.
Okay, I googled carrot original colour. Orange carrots get their bright orange colour from beta-carotene. That's a hilarious name for that. The origin of the cultivated carrot is rooted in the purple carrot in the region around modern-day Afghanistan. So they're purple rather than blue.
Yeah, but again, this whole discussion about what purple is and what blue is, and when it comes to vegetables, like they're not orange, is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, now Bill. So interesting, colorful vegetable topic aside, do you have anything else to add on your adventures, or are we wrapping up?
Adventures. Adventures. No, I don't think so.
Cool. I have something to top up, but we're going to run over time. We said we are going to be really strict and work to time this time. So I'll perhaps throw that in the next screen room, I suppose.
Great.
Cool. So I will talk to you very soon.
You certainly will.
And it was a pleasure as always. And Edgar out.
Edgar out.